put together our other aspect of life after residency, and that's recruiting, because that can start while you're even in residency and really goes hand in hand with contract negotiation. Sometimes people are even handed contracts while they're still in residency. And it's important to understand what you're looking at, but also understand how to find out what else is out there. So Miss Tessa Rolleston, she is here from Rossman Rossman Search, and that's been one of the biggest recruitment agencies for neurosurgery since I was in residency. Miss Nancy Cusick is probably one that a lot of people are aware of and familiar with, but Miss Tessa Rolleston is here with us today. She joined Rossman in October of 2023, officially took over as the main neurosurgery recruiter in the Midwest in August of 2024. Prior to Rossman, Tessa worked for 15 plus years in hospitality industry as a marketing director and director of operations for several award-winning Cleveland restaurants. We're really excited to have her here today to, again, kind of walk you through what the role of the recruiter is, how you can use a recruiter to the best of your ability. They're not just people in your inbox. They really can navigate what can be sometimes overwhelming job market and really kind of hone in on what you want. And I'll let Tessa kind of discuss the rest.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's wonderful to speak to everyone today. So yes, I work for Rossman Search. We are a specialized physician recruitment firm. We've been around for about 20 years. We started in just neurosurgery, and since then we've grown to 4 permanent service lines. But neurosurgery is our longest standing. I work with 3 other recruiters, so there are 4 of us that work collaboratively. We cover the entire United States, and we work on both the client side and the candidate side, and that really allows us to be fully ingrained in the neurosurgery market. And all we do all day long is talk to neurosurgeons. So we're really able to be both advisors on the client side to what makes a neurosurgery opportunity attractive to a candidate. And then we're there to be a guide and a resource on the candidate side, because, you know, as we know, it can be sort of like a black box and a mysterious process to start looking for a permanent position after being in training for so long. So we really try to bridge that gap. So I will start sharing my screen. So really, me see if I can scroll. Okay, there we go. So really my role is in candidate support. So the things that we'll be talking about today are how I support candidates in my role as a recruiter, what that job process looks like, sort of from sending your CV out to then finally being in the contract negotiation phase. Obviously, Erica touched a lot on that. So I will sort of just do a little bit of high level of what that looks like from my point of view, and then we'll talk about some key takeaways. So my main role is supporting candidates through the job search process. A lot of times it is working with residents and fellows, and it's really getting to know the candidate and what is important to them, and that's starting with what is important to them in their practice. Is there a subspecialty that you're going into? How important is that subspecialty to your overall practice? Do you have research interests? What are your clinical interests? And then we do a deeper dive into, you know, where the locations you're targeting. You know, a lot of times residency and fellowship takes you away from where you grew up and away from family. So are there specific locations you're targeting? Do you want to move near where your spouse has family? And then also what type of employment, what type of practice you want to join. Obviously, you've been in academics. If you're still a resident and a trainee, all you know is academics. Are you interested in joining a hospital and being more a part of the community and focusing more on patient care? Are you interested in private practice? And are you interested in the entrepreneurial side of neurosurgery as well? So when we first talk to a candidate, we really try to dig in deep about what you're specifically looking for, what your needs are, so that we can paint a holistic picture of you as a candidate. And some of the benefits of working with Rossman Search is, you know, we're completely free. We're just here to help help you navigate what can be a long and tedious process sometimes. I'll talk a little bit later about how long that process can be and when you should start, thinking of sending your CVs out to practices and what that looks like. We're fortunate to have been in the neurosurgery market for about 20 years now. So we do know all the ins and outs. We're able to know sort of what subspecialties are becoming saturated. We're able to look at all of our jobs holistically and say, where do we see the market moving to? We're also able to sit on the client side, and we're able to talk to programs and institutions and practices that want to recruit a neurosurgeon and really tell them, what they need and what neurosurgeons expect sort of coming in to join their practice. And we're able to then, guide on the back end with candidates to let them know sort of the history of this practice, why there was turnover, some administration, changes, so that when you are looking at opportunities and we're helping you, you have a holistic view of what those opportunities look like. So now we'll delve into the process and the job search process and what that looks like. Before you even start, sending your CV out and looking, you're going to have, personal priorities and professional priorities. And there are some common mistakes, when you first start the job process. Sometimes geography can be a hindrance. Sometimes focusing so much on a certain location that you ignore some opportunities that may be beneficial to you from a professional standpoint. But obviously, being in training for so long, there is a quality of life and a lifestyle opportunity that comes with moving out of training and moving into practice. So how important? Oh, do we have a question? How important is that quality of life?
You didn't come this morning?
If you're in Babuike, you're not muted.
Uh-huh.
Nanetta, can you mute? And then sort of what are your professional priorities? Do you specifically, really enjoy research and teaching? And so you are looking for an academic position that has a clinical faculty appointment. Are you interested in any and all? Are you sort of just, want to see what's out there? And in the beginning, you're going to cast a wide net. Obviously, if you do are going into a certain subspecialty, what does that look like? How large a part of your practice is that going to be? If you are doing a skull-based fellowship or a neurosurgical oncology fellowship, are you willing to take a general practice that maybe has less of a cranial component, but that will build over time? A lot of these things, it's good to think about before you start your job search, just so you don't have too much of a tunnel vision as you start looking at opportunities. Opening yourself up as much as you can to seeing what's out there is something we always recommend. And then we're here to just sort of talk to you about it. We will also, since our goal is to get to know you as well as we can as a candidate, sometimes we'll say, well, hey, we have something that's maybe not exactly where you were looking, but it checks all of these boxes. And, and so it's sort of our job to help be a sounding board and a resource for you in that way. We had a question sort of on when do you start looking? So we do recommend starting to look about 18 months before the end of your training. So right now is sort of, the beginning time, ramping up though for everyone done in 2026. Residents and trainees. And we recommend starting that early just because of the time it can take between having that first initial phone interview. And then, you usually have a phone interview, a Zoom interview, some time will pass before your site visit. Then usually, if there's continued interest on both sides of the table, you'll go back for a second site visit. Then you enter into the contract negotiation phase, which we just said you should give about 6 months to, because you never know how long the back and forth is going to be. And the larger the institution or the larger the hospital system you're joining is, sometimes the more tedious that contract negotiation phase can be, just because it has to go through several different hands to get approved. So right now, is when I'm reaching out to all of my trainees and residents done in 2026 and suggesting that they start, getting their CVs together and looking at opportunities and submitting, so that, by this summer and this fall, they've at least, talked to a few places. Maybe they already have their top 5. By the holiday season, you're hopefully going on first site visits and then quickly followed by second site visits, so that when it comes to late winter, early spring of 2026, you are at that phase where you're deciding between 1 or 2 places, you're signing those contracts, you're looking to move, you need to get credentialed. Licensing can take longer than expected. So we definitely recommend giving yourself as much time as you possibly can. And I will say too, if you are going into a subspecialty that maybe is a little bit more saturated, or the jobs are fewer and far between, or you want a research position in an academic institution, starting even 2 years, just reaching out, talking to recruiters, just starting to see what's out there. It's almost, I'm not going to say it's never too early, but it is nice to sort of not feel that crunch at the end when it comes to the contract negotiation part. So this is just a brief overview of, like I said, now is the time to get your CV together. And a lot of this stuff is self-explanatory. One thing I will always recommend is, if you are doing a post residency fellowship, please include that on your CV. A lot of times you're probably going to be interviewing for jobs that have components within your subspecialty. So it's definitely important to include those future fellowships. This is just a brief overview: your name and current contact information, certification, honors and awards, teaching experience, publications. I have sample CVs. There's most CVs are totally fine, but there are some that are just laid out in an easy, quick, concise way for clients to look through. So I'm always here to share those kind of resources as well. And so now, depending on what practice type you're interested to join, private practice, academics, hospital employed, they all have slightly varying different frameworks for how you're compensated and how that salary works. So a base salary is common in academics. There are some opportunities for bonuses, but it's more of that consistent compensation. You'll have a faculty appointment, you'll be doing research, you're working with residents. There's a lot more that goes to wanting to join academics than just the money. And then in hospital employment, a common compensation framework is a salary plus a productivity bonus. So that's a guaranteed salary, and then a bonus compensation if you hit a certain RVU number. And then there are other various bonuses, as Erica touched on. Pay for call, sometimes that's included in your base salary, sometimes it's not. Or if you take extra days of call, you want to know what you're being compensated at. There are quality bonuses, retention bonuses, and stipends, as well as some opportunities in academics for productivity bonuses as well. This is a little bit deeper dive into specifically. So in academics, you can expect a base salary like we talked about. There might be a clinical productivity based bonus as well. You might also have a productivity based bonus for things like publications. Depending on what type of position, you might have a 50-50 research position. So you have a 50% protected time to do your research and then 50% clinical time. So what does that research package look like? What does that lab space look like? Those are things to consider with an academic position. And then hospital employed is usually a base salary, a clinical productivity bonus. There's sometimes an opportunity, a potential to move to a pure RVU structure after the first few years. And then that call piece can also be really important. How many days are baked in? Are all the days, can you get paid for call? What does that look like? And most of the time that is negotiable as well. Sometimes, there are 3 neurosurgeons, they each take 10 days of call. There's not a lot of wiggle room. Sometimes in a larger group, there is more wiggle room. It just depends. And then a private practice, usually to start when you're first starting out, you're going to start with a base salary so that you can get ramped up. And then you usually move to a collections expense model, which is eat what you treat after 1 or 2 years. There's most likely call pay with some hospitals that your private practice has contracted with. And then the thing about private practices that is interesting, that is, is the ancillary opportunities and the other ways to make money. That's more of that entrepreneurial side I was looking at, I was talking about. Are you interested in more of the business management side of neurosurgery? Do you want to buy into a surgery center? Do you want to own the equipment that is in that surgery center, and sort of how involved do you want to be in the day-to-day collections? Because a private practice is obviously running your own business, whereas in a hospital employed situation, you don't really deal with the hiring and firing of nurses and collections. And, you take more on your shoulders in a private practice, and there's also some more opportunities to make money as well. So now we're at the point where, so you have your CV, you've sent it off to a few places, I've submitted you to a few places, and they're interested in talking to you. And so you're going to have a phone interview, and, you're excited. And sometimes you want to talk about everything on that first phone interview. We like to say a phone interview is still that introductory time of you sort of getting to know high level what this institution or program looks like, what is the culture here, what's the culture of your workplace, what are you looking for in a new hire, maybe more of like the overarching vision for that practice or for that program. This is also a great time to dive in a little bit to what are the expectations. How many cases are each surgeon doing? How many cases can I expect to do? How many hospitals am I covering? And I will say the benefit of working with a recruiter and working with a recruitment firm like Rossman is when you're applying through opportunities through us, we have done the due diligence and we know most of the answers to these questions. We'll know about how many cases you'll be doing. We'll know the locations that, you're going, what hospitals you're going to be traveling to. We'll know a little bit more about the culture. We might have worked with this group in the past. We might have recruited the neurosurgeons there. Obviously you'll be talking to practices and programs on your own. And so that's, where you're a little bit, where it can be a little bit more tedious to be like, well, when do I ask this? When is it appropriate to do that? So the phone interview is still just high level. What are the surgeons doing? How many cases? What does my role look like? And things like that. Then, usually after the phone interview too, there might be several Zoom interviews or video interviews with administration, maybe a few of the other neurosurgeons. And once and that's still the time where you're just getting to know each other. You're asking high level questions, and you're also seeing the chemistry of you and them, and seeing, could these be people that I would want to work with? Does this sound like a culture that I would be excited to join? And then, say all of that goes well, there's still continued interest on both sides of the table, then you'll most likely be invited out for a site visit. And a site visit is really for two main things. It's to actually see the space that you would be working in, to see, to meet people in person, to see the hospital, to see the OR rooms, to really get a feel for how the day-to-day workings of that practice are. You can see more of like whether or not your personality type sort of fits in with the personalities that you meet. If you're a trainee or a resident, you'll hopefully be meeting the neurosurgeons you'll be working alongside with that will be offering you mentorship. And then this is also the time where you get to know the community that you would be joining. And usually, they ask if you would like a community tour if you're going to a site visit. And that is because you might know the town very well. It might be because, you're from there or you have family there, or you might just be very excited about this opportunity in a state or city you know nothing about. So, the opportunity to see the community and to ask, just questions about how things operate, how are the schools, how's the nightlife, things that are important to you. That's sort of what, where you get a very, very in-depth, holistic picture of that opportunity. That site visit, that first site visit can be really crucial. Most of the time that first site visit is just you, or, you know, I think it's 50-50. Oftentimes they will invite your spouse or partner, but most of the time the second site visit is really for you to bring your partner or your family. This is when things are getting a little bit more serious. Maybe you didn't have time to do the community tour on your first site visit, so now you really need, you know, now you are getting pretty far down, you know, with this group. So you really want to see, can I live here? Can I see myself here? Do I want to buy a house here? You know, sometimes, yes, of course, it's, you know, the position is important, but also where you're going to be living and where your family is going to be relocating to is also very important. So obviously, you know, we talked a lot about contract negotiation. And when do you talk about that? When do you bring that up? When is it appropriate to start talking about how much money you're going to be making and what that structure looks like? Again, it's one of the benefits of working with a recruiter or recruitment firm. I should have some of that information for each of our opportunities. Obviously, we vet the opportunities on the client side just as much as we vet candidates. When someone comes to us and says, I want to hire a neurosurgeon, you know, we make sure that their compensation is what it should be. We have MGMA data and nerves compensation data. So we're able to say, well, this is where the median is. This is where we think you need to be. So we usually have an idea of what that compensation structure looks like. If there are bonuses, is there an opportunity for, you know, sign-ons? But sometimes you're going to be looking at opportunities, you know, that you found on your own that you're interviewing with. And so it's sometimes tough. We all talk to, you know, it's difficult to bring up money. So usually this is on the first site visit. Sometimes things will have been going so well before the first site visit, you might be presented with an LOI on your site visit, or there might be a verbal offer. And sometimes that's a surprise to you. Sometimes it's not. You never ever have to feel pressure to accept anything on the spot. You can always say, thank you so much. I look forward to reviewing the terms. And then when it comes to contract negotiation, which I'll talk about in a minute, you want to know in the future, not just how things are set up now, but how will your raises be determined? The compensation model you're talking about, you know, now with getting hired, is that how it will be in the future? How will your performance be evaluated? And if and when your contract is up, what, you know, how will your compensation be set up when it's renewed? And so now obviously Erica went over a lot in depth. This is more just a sort of high level. You know, I do have quite a few candidates who aren't exactly sure what an LOI is. Is it legally binding? So an LOI is still part of the interview process. This is still you and the client on the other side of the table getting to know each other. This is just, you know, a deeper dive into that. So an LOI is not, it's not legally binding, but it does represent a commitment, kind of the same as like an engagement ring. Yes, you can obviously break an engagement, but it might not necessarily look that good. But this is where you can start to really see terms outlined. And this is sort of where we as recruiters suggest that you do the bulk of your negotiation. And really too, you know, if you're gonna go back and forth, we also suggest that this be an opportunity you're really excited about, you know, because it can leave a bad taste in someone's mouth if you know, maybe you have 3 offers and this is like the third one, you know, you're not as excited about it. You go back and forth a bunch and you end up walking away after there's been a lot of work done. You know, it can sometimes look bad. So we do suggest, you know, if this is an opportunity you really, really want to be, you know, open and not aggressive with the LOI, but that's the time that you talk about things. You know, that's the time for a little bit more back and forth, because once you get to, and you know, the contract and the employment agreement actually being drawn up, that's where the changes can take just longer than anticipated. What an LOI is not, though, an LOI is not your final contract. You know, if you see something in an LOI that is a red flag to you or something that you weren't aware of, now is the time to talk about it. Don't hesitate to seek clarification on an LOI. We usually don't recommend talking to a contract lawyer when you have an LOI, this is kind of the time to be open in communication with the program or institution that you're looking to join, to sort of be open with those recruiters about, you know, what your expectations are, some things that you would like to change. And, you know, don't hesitate to sort of advocate for yourself, because now is the time, always obviously in a respectful manner, but you want the least amount of surprises as you can have once you get to that once you have that physical contract in your hand. So we do like to say contract negotiation is a final step in the interview process. And as Erica said, there have absolutely been times where we have had candidates, you know, I mean, it walk away and clients walk away. I mean, I have had examples of negotiation that has gone on for over a year, and you know, a candidate kept making requests for things to increase, and those requests kept being made, but it sort of seemed like there wasn't an end to those requests. And then finally, the client had to walk away. You know, they were at this point where it had left such a bad taste in their mouth that everything was being negotiated to such an nth degree and nothing was satisfactory, that they were like, well, what does this mean about this person's character, or how easy this person, you know, will be to work with? So as Erica suggested, you know, if you do work with a lawyer, you want to make sure that their temperament kind of, you know, matches you. You don't necessarily want them to be insanely aggressive when it comes to the contract negotiation phase, because you want things to be fair. And especially if this is a job you're excited about, you know, you don't want to make unreasonable demands that might cause them to pull that contract. And also always be prepared to walk away. If there is something in a contract and you have, and it's made you uncomfortable and it's not something that you want to sign, you know, we never suggest, you know, just signing it, or, you know, the whole point of getting this job after so much training is that you are excited about this job. You trust the group that you're joining. This is a huge step for you and your family. You're finally entering practice after years of training. And, you know, you don't want to feel that you have to sign something really quick because you're running out of time, because you didn't give yourself that time, you know. And then once you even sign the contract, you're going to have to go through licensing, credentialing with a hospital. There's going to be so much time at the end, even after you finish this, that you don't want to, get so hung up on all of these details within the contract that it sort of stalls the process. So, you know, obviously Erica went over all of this, so I'll just go over this briefly, but key factors to negotiate and understand in your contract is what's negotiable. Resident and fellow stipends, obviously relocation assistance. If it's not in your LOI, you know, like Erica said, ask for it, you know. That's definitely something I see is typical. Sign-on and commencement bonuses are becoming, you know, more standardized as well. Make sure you understand, like we said, that non-compete. I'll agree with Erica, you know, once a day, people are like, oh, I thought that was gone away with. And so you really need to understand what that looks like, especially because I do see a lot of doctors who, you know, leave training, join a practice, work there for about 4 to 5 years. Their goal is to get board certified. They're able to do that. And then once they're board certified, they have a little bit more flexibility. Maybe now is the time, you know, to move near family or something. So you really want to understand what that non-compete looks like, especially if you do end up joining a practice that is around family, and maybe you want to move 10 or 20 miles away, and that's where you want to be for the next 15 or 20 years, and you want to be able to do that. Student loan forgiveness is also something that can make a contract more attractive, you know, and then understanding the term and the contract length as well. Is it evergreen? Is it not? What does that look like? Base salary is you know, obviously negotiable, and so is the work RVU rate. Like I said, we at Rossman, we get the MGMA data every year it's released. We also work with nerves. We're on the board with nerves, so we know, you know, what the median looks like, what the 25th percentile looks like. So we're sort of able to give you that guidance, so you know that when, you know, that it is what they're offering you is fair, and, you know, in comparison. And then things to understand, obviously we went over malpractice insurance, the claims made versus occurrence, tail insurance, termination type, for cause, without cause, you know, the standard HR benefits. If there are quality bonuses, what are those metrics? What does that look like? What are you going to have to do to meet those metrics? And then what is the situation with call? Is all call baked into your base salary? Is, if you do, you know, if it's 5 days of call and then you start taking extra call, what is each day? What are you compensated for? So you just want to make sure you understand all that. And I do recommend to have, you know, if call is a big deal for you, and sometimes I would say candidates later on in their careers, you know, they've maybe been in a situation where they've been working and it's been 1 and 2 call. And one of the main reasons why they're looking to move is because that call is too burdensome for them. They are looking for an opportunity that they share more with 3 and 4, you know, so there's 4 of them. And if you get a contract and that is a sticking point for you and that's not in there, you want to make sure that that is in there, you know, and to protect yourself. And we also went over this. So the different benefits and sign-ons, commencement bonuses, stipends, relocation assistance, and then ongoing performance, extra call for pay, quality bonuses, and retention bonuses. So some key takeaways. I do suggest in the beginning of your search being as open as you possibly can. Now, you know, a lot of that openness will depend on your subspecialty and, you know, what kind of practice you're looking to build. Obviously, if you're, you know, just looking to do general bread and butter neurosurgery or, you know, spine as a focus, that the majority of our jobs are, you know, geared towards that. But then I have a lot of jobs that are general jobs that have the ability to build a service line or to capture, you know, migrating cases. And so I do like to suggest to be open in the beginning, you know, cast as wide a net as you can, geographically wise and practice wise. You know, you would be surprised at people that come out and say, I only want academics. And then a few years later, they're so happy in private practice. Or somebody who thought, no, I want to own a surgery center. I want to be partner. And then they, you know, they love teaching and they actually were, you know, more into research and they work at an academically affiliated, you know, hospital. So, you know, not getting too hung up on facets such as geography, compensation, or practice setting. I promise you all the pieces of the puzzle really come in holistically when it comes to finding a job after you've had so much training. You know, I will be wary about just having one thing be important to you. Try and look at everything, you know, holistically. Stay courageous and engage through the interview process. It can seem tedious, and you know, especially if you're interviewing with a large institution or an academic institution or a large hospital system, there are many moving parts, and staying vigilant through the interview process. You know, sometimes those candidates that are the most patient and continuously follow up are the ones who can sort of make it through that. And the hardest part is when you send your CV off and you hear nothing for a while, or you have a great phone call and then it takes 6 weeks to you know, to hear if they want you to come in for a site visit. So that's where working with a recruiter again is a benefit. We're able to sort of, so we know on the other side of the table, you know, to sit tight. They're still finishing up their first, you know, phone interviews. I'll let you know when and if they want to reach out. That's where working with a recruiter can really be beneficial because we can sort of walk this process with you. We know what's going on the client side. We can keep you informed. We can also let you know, if you have 3 offers in front of you and one of them is that you really want to take, we can let you know, well, what's going on with the other 2. You know, do they have offers out to other candidates, and sort of what's going on specifically with that practice. Staying in good communication through the offer and negotiation stages is crucial on both sides of the table. We tell clients all the time, make sure that you follow up with your neurosurgeons as you are waiting for their, capital requests, or if they did have a request for a sign-on bonus, or if they did have a request for a compensation increase and you're working on that, please keep them in the loop. And then as you, the candidate, have a few things in front of you that you're deciding upon, just having that due diligence to also keep them in the loop just makes everyone feel included. And you know, it's just, it sort of shows your character, that even at the end of the interview process, you know, you still have the integrity to consistently be in contact with everybody. You know, focusing on your ability to develop surgical volume in a particular environment. You know, can you make money at it here? Is there enough volume for you? You know, if you are a vascular neurosurgeon and, you know, you're joining another vascular neurosurgeon, and, you know, how is that going to work? Are there enough cases for you? If you do want to have a cranial component to your practice, you know, you want to make sure that you would be able to see those few cases. If you do take call, are you able to keep, you know, those cases that you have during call, or do you have to turn those over? So really, you know, making sure that you can see the full picture of how that position really looks for you, and really how you would ramp up to have a successful practice is also very important. We always do suggest thinking about long-term goals as much as you can. In the beginning, you're going to see giant numbers when it comes to compensation. It's going to be, it's the stuff you've worked for, but also trying to have a level head and really saying, okay, well, how is this going to work for me in 5 years? We never suggest like just seeing stars when you see a big number and saying like, oh, well, I don't really like that location, or I don't really trust that administration, but the compensation is amazing. I only need to be there for a few years, then I can leave. It's really tough sometimes to have to build your referral base up, to leave a practice after a few years, you know. So we never really suggest, you know, doing that short-term big compensation. It just doesn't, it might not support your long-term goals. Every time you move or relocate, you have to build up that referral base, and it can feel like starting over, and that can just be really difficult. And then lastly, we never suggest a contract with someone you don't trust. If you've heard things from peers or from colleagues about, you know, how a hospital is ran or what's happening at a practice, but they're offering you a lot of money, or it's like right in your spouse's hometown, you know, it's really tough. A contract is great. It you know, it can save both parties from a lot of heartache, but signing a contract with someone you don't trust and thinking your contract will protect you is definitely a mistake that we've seen. So just sort of looking at the job process as holistically as you can, and then using a recruiter like me to bounce off, you know, ideas. Well, I'm thinking about, you know, I really like this location. I'm not sure about the volume, but, you know, or if I joined this private practice, I would be able to do this. A lot of times we're just here to be a sounding board to help you work through what you really want. And then as, you know, time goes on, from that 18 months, you sort of whittle down into hopefully you have a few offers of places that you would be equally excited about. And you don't feel sort of pigeonholed into accepting an opportunity, you know, because you have to. And then I think that's all for my presentation. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tessa. Thank you for that really helpful introduction for a lot of our members here tuning in on how to use the job recruiter when you come in. Anybody who has questions, you can put it in the chat or simply unmute yourself. I'll ask one that definitely sometimes comes up, especially when we're looking at recruiters and looking at how they help us find the best job. We understand that you, especially now, I understand recruiters also work with the hospital systems.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know that the recruiters are working in our best interest rather than just trying to fill a position that a hospital has hired them to fill?
So I would say, so you know, I can only speak for Rossman Search. And one of the reasons why I really loved the philosophy of our firm when I joined was because like we really see ourselves as matchmakers in a way. Also, our reputation is everything to us. Retention is huge. So a lot of firms, there are a lot of contingency firms that they will take your CV off of, you know, the internet and send it to everybody, and they will send it to jobs in places you would never want to go to, and in specialties that you're not in. And we literally take the opposite approach. So Judy Rossman, she's our founder, and she's where our name comes from. She's actually married to a neurosurgeon, and she's a lawyer by trade. And she, you know, she saw the cold side of recruitment when her husband was coming out of residency, and she really wanted to have more of a specialization. So all we do is neurosurgery, and our job to candidates is equal to clients. I mean, I don't want to place a doctor at a job that they're unhappy with. I mean, the neurosurgery is a small market, and we're here to make the neurosurgeons as happy as the clients. Also, too, if I suggest a job to a candidate that is not a good fit for that client, and they hire them and they don't work in a year, that client will also never work with me. So there's an integrity thing where I really feel that it's my responsibility to both the surgeons I work with and the clients to have integrity when it comes to searches, and to really know what you want as a candidate. You know, is it location that's important to you? Is it volume that's important to you? Is it research that's important to you? And then to only present those jobs, and then you're in the driver's seat, at least with Rossman. You know, you tell me when you want to submit your CV to an opportunity. You know, I'll give you the full details. I'll let you tell me yes or no. I'll let you ask those in-depth questions, because I really don't think that I would be valuable to hospitals or to candidates if my job was just to send out CVs to make money. Like you know, our retention rate is something that stood out to me when I first started. I think we have like a 93% retention rate, that doctors stay at their positions for more than 5 years. And that's very important to us because, you know, obviously neurosurgery being a small community, we do look at how often people, you know, move around. And so I want to make sure if I'm talking to you about a job, that you're excited about that job.
Thank you. And yes, as I mentioned before, Rossman, as many people have been in neurosurgery for a long time, is a longstanding name and has helped many people, including myself, finding our positions. Another question that comes up when we're, especially as we're senior residents and as we're looking at jobs for the first time, and we go to that initial interview, how many times should we be going back, and in what time frame to kind of look at a place that we're considering?
Well, I mean, usually, like if you've done you know, you've done your initial phone interview, if you're still in, and it's an opportunity through us, and you're still interested, I mean, you know, until they, I guess, like how often should you follow up, and like what that process looks like. So I would say that's also a benefit of working with a recruiter and an opportunity through us, because we know exactly what's going on the client side. So sometimes it can seem like you send your CV out and you hear nothing, and you're not sure, do I check up in a week, do I check up in 2 weeks? So that's where it's advantageous to work with someone like me, because I'll know, all right, well, for the next few weeks they're going to be doing their phone interviews, you know, and we're able to be that bridge. And a lot of times, to be honest, the recruiters will ask us directly to ask, you know, our candidates, you know, do they want to move to the next stage? Are they still interested? And so we're able to sort of take that mental weight of you remembering to constantly check up. We're able to sort of be a guide, you know, through that. And but I would say, an opportunities that you're interviewing not through us, to continue to show interest. You know, if you had a good phone interview, and then it's been, I mean, always after the phone interview, send a thank you email, you know, just to let them know that you appreciated their time and that you have continued interest. And then, you know, following up maybe a week or two, and to show them continued interest. Also, oftentimes too, opportunities will come on pause. Maybe that hospital had approval from administration, and then something with budgeting happened, so they are interested in you, they just forgot to tell you. So if you kind of check in, and show that you're interested, you know, it can sometimes be advantageous. And I know it's hard, you feel like your body bothering people, or, you don't want to come off as overly aggressive. And that's where if you think that, you can always text me like, hey, Tessa, I interviewed here. We had a phone interview on this date. Haven't heard anything. What do you think I should do? And then depending on that specific, situation, I'm able to give you advice, just so you're comfortable continuing that communication.
Thank you. And kind of along that same vein, when we're looking at following up, is a red flag in either extremes. One, if they give you kind of a contract upfront, kind of that first visit, or if you do a phone interview, do a visit, and you haven't received a contract.
So, I mean, unfortunately, both extremes happen often. I mean, we will have times where now I would say if you're in practice, things can have a tendency to move quicker. Usually if you're a resident or a trainee, there is that phone interview, Zoom interview, site visit, but we are seeing more and more that site visit is more of the possibility of talking about a contract or having a verbal offer. But they also it might be a popular job. There might be 4 or 5 people going out for that site visit. So they might want to have those site visits first, then narrow it down from there. So again, that is where, and that I think is where everyone gets the most nervous, because you're excited or you're expecting something from a certain opportunity and you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So that's where I think that if you've had that first site visit and there wasn't any talk of that, after you get back following up and saying, I enjoyed my visit so much, I could really see myself here. I would love to talk about what, those next step might be. If you are continued, interest in me, that way, you can at least either get an email that says, thank you so much. We're still talking to other candidates. We'll be in touch, and they might be vague about that. And that's when you have to, maybe set a calendar and check up in a few weeks. Or that is, again, when working with a recruiter is helpful, because I can say, yeah, we still have maybe about 2 to 3 weeks of site visits. Then they're going to narrow it down to 3 candidates. I'll let you know if you're one of those 3. But then there are some times where if you are in residency, you might be recruited. There might, you might go to fellowship, and then somebody from your residency program reaches out, and it's only a few conversations and you have a contract. And so I've definitely seen the pendulum swing, either way. That's where sort of your courage and due diligence in realizing that a lot of these situations are going to be different, and then using me to just talk about things and asking for advice, because you're very right. It can be vastly different also, depending on if it's a private practice or a large hospital system or, an academic institution. Are you also going to bring all of your research with you? Like, so there, and also too, that's also different questions to ask, what those research package looks like. How would you get to that point? And that could also take a while. They might have to get various answers from the powers that be. And so sometimes that can take a few months and you think that they've forgotten about